the tower. K-Sec blocked the intersection.
Hello, it's Dave here.
And it's Richard.
And we're looking at the Mirror's Edge Catalyst Beta on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Now this game doubles up as a prequel and reboot of sorts for the series. It's developed by DICE and is running using their proprietary Frostbite-powered engine. And as with other titles like Battlefield 4 and Star Wars Battlefront, it's targeting a 60 FPS update on both consoles.
Okay, so this is quite a departure from the original Mirror's Edge, which was actually running on Unreal Engine 3. I think the project at the time was simply ahead of Frostbite, so that's what they went for at the time. And that was on last gen, and I guess on this gen obviously they can roll out their own technology, and I think the big surprise for me was that they are actually aiming for 60 FPS here. The original was 30 and it had quite sort of bad controller lag. I actually measured that at about 133 milliseconds at the time, which really isn't particularly great for a game of this sort. So I was happy to see that they're going for the higher frame rate, but it looks as though they're not quite hitting the target in this particular code.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously the controller response feels a lot better than the previous game due to the doubling in frame rate, but performance is really uneven. The most noticeable thing I've found is the game tends to stutter fairly often.
Yeah, they've gone for an open world here, so it may well be the case that all of the data streaming that's going on in the background, they're bringing in new assets from the hard drive, they're decompressing them on the fly and then they're generating them on screen. That may well cause some of the issues that we're seeing here. It's actually something you see quite a lot on current gen titles, and a lot of it's down to CPU. It's quite a CPU intensive task, and the current consoles, well, one of the weaknesses is that CPU isn't exactly state of the art.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a problem in this particular game. Overall, I think the PlayStation 4 doesn't suffer quite so much as Xbox One. There are sort of longer stretches where we get the 60 FPS lock we want, but even then it's not completely immune from the issue.
I think the issue that's sort of worrying me here is the frame times. If you look at Xbox One in particular, they're going off the graph here, which is really not good at all. So yeah, you can register fairly large frame rates, but do keep an eye on that frame time graph, because you are seeing a lot of variance in the outdoor areas. We're sort of indoors now, it doesn't look so bad.
Yeah, I've noticed maybe the streaming's behind that. As when we get these sort of big dips in frame time, we also get sort of pauses on screen as well, so it manifests as a lot heavier stutter than just normal frame rate drops.
And resolution wise, if it's Frostbite and they're aiming for 60, well, we've seen that before, haven't we? 720 on Xbox One and 900 on PS4.
That's right, that hasn't changed here, so the image quality looks very similar to previous Frostbite 3 titles. In this case, PlayStation 4 gets a considerable advantage. It's a bit soft, but, you know, it holds up pretty well. Xbox One, not so much.
Yeah, performance though, that's kind of like my number one concern here, because I'd really like to play this with a locked 60. Now, to their credit, DICE did do a really good job with Star Wars Battlefront, and pre-production during E3 we gave them a bit of a hard time for how the game was shaping up there. They did actually get it into shape, and performance did actually improve marginally from the beta to the full release. So fingers crossed they can actually do the same here, but otherwise I think we're going to have to take a look at the PC version to get that absolute consistency in frame rate.
Okay, so now we're moving on to cutscenes, and what's interesting here, Rich, is these are actually capped at 30 frames per second, but performance isn't entirely stable here either.
Yeah, this is interesting, and I think you figured out that they're actually using full motion video sequences here as opposed to real-time rendering.
Yeah, the giveaway for me was that the resolution between the two consoles was the same here.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what we did there is we took some still shots, took them into Photoshop, ramped up the contrast and the brightness, and you can see straight away macro blocking artifacts. So there's an issue here in terms of the actual playback of these visuals. It's not solid at all. So again, well, usually when a video game is playing a pre-rendered video sequence cutscene, what it's actually doing simultaneously is loading new data for the game in the background. So again, it looks like this may well be an issue with the beta code at the moment, which hopefully they will be able to clear up, because we shouldn't be seeing those stutters. We should be seeing a consistent 30 FPS playback here.
So yeah, this has been a look at Mirror's Edge. So far the game seems to be shaping up pretty well from a gameplay perspective. Performance isn't quite there yet, but there's still time until the game's release, so hopefully DICE will be able to sort of optimise the engine a bit more and get us closer to the 60 FPS update we desire.
Okay, good stuff. Well, that's where we're at for now. We'll be back with coverage of the full game as soon as we get final code, plus we'll be looking at the PC version of the beta too. But in the meantime, that's all we've got for you. Please like, subscribe and all of that jazz, and we'll see you soon.
Still could. You had a run for me?